The decision for them to even get married was a cause of great strife. They couldn't agree on that. But ultimately, despite that, in 2007, they got married. And in short order, they adopted a daughter, a baby girl, that they named Brianna in 2008. A fact the defendant would later describe in an interview with the state police on the night of Annamarie's killing as, quote, another stressor in their lives. And within a little over a month after Brianna's adoption became final, was the first time the police had to intervene in the relationship of the defendant and Annamarie. This was in September 2008. On this date, there was yet another argument within their home. And the evidence will show that Ann scooped up Brianna, got into her car, and fled to the Granby police station. The defendant was in her own car, in short order behind her, but Ann got there first. And shortly after Cara arrived at the police station, she was put in handcuffs. And she was placed under arrest for assault and battery on Annamarie. Also, Annamarie got a restraining order against the defendant. That restraining order kicked the defendant out of her home, which was only deeded in her name. It gave custody of Brianna to Ann, and it prohibited any contact from the defendant to Brianna on this restraining order. You'll also hear the Department of Children and Families was notified on that date. Now, you will hear in the evidence that within relatively short order, that restraining order and ultimately the charges of assault and battery were dropped. They didn't move forward. But this is an important event in the lives of the defendant and Annamarie. This event set a tone. Again, months later, on the night of Annamarie's killing, in her interview with the state police, the defendant references this time frame. She says she was bamboozled by Ann, that Ann had got there first, that Ann had committed an act of violence towards her in the house. But she's the one that ended up charged. She's the one that ended up with a restraining order against her. Ann got the upper hand, and it was something the defendant would never forget. You'll hear that after that arrest, the hostility and the issues continued. Nothing changed. According to the defendant's word, the same problems were still there. By late spring of 2009, the two had made a decision, both of them, that the relationship was over. They could continue no more. And they both filed for divorce. But they took two different paths. The defendant filed divorce paperwork first, but she did not have Ann serve with that divorce paperwork. Her plan was to try to do it amicably, to hire a single attorney, and to come to agreements. Annamarie had different ideas. And before the defendant could serve Ann with the paperwork, she filed her own paperwork at court. She asked for the house, she asked for custody of Brianna, and she asked for spousal and child support. And on May 26, 2009, a sheriff arrived at the home of 18 Barton Street, which is where Annamarie and the defendant lived together with Brianna, and served Cara the papers of this divorce, of what Ann was asking for in this divorce filing. Within hours of that, a 911 call came from the house. The defendant was calling 911. You're going to have an opportunity to hear that 911 call. It's approximately 4 or 5 minutes in length. And I'd ask you to pay very particular attention to it. I would suggest that that 911 call is a peek into the life of the defendant and Annamarie Rintala, of what was going on with them, and particularly the defendant's state of mind, her response to these issues. You will hear wild mood swings. You will hear her pleading for help, going into hysteria. You can see from this 911 call how quickly the smallest of things in this relationship can make things spiral completely out of control. This 911 call triggered a police response to the home. The police arrived at the home, they spoke with the defendant, and they spoke with Annamarie. And after the police were there, the two of them got in their own cars and immediately went to the Eastern Hampshire District Court in Belchertown seeking restraining orders. The defendant seeking a restraining order against Annamarie, and Annamarie seeking a restraining order against the defendant. And you'll have an opportunity to hear the court recording of that restraining order hearing, the words of the defendant, the words of Annamarie, very importantly, the words words of the judge. You'll hear that both of them sought restraining orders against the other to force the other one out of the home so they could stay there, and for custody of Brianna. Both cross asking for that, making that request to the judge, and the judge heard both of them in the same hearing. You'll hear the defendant in this hearing say, "I have reached all that I can take." She's emotional, and she asked the court to make Ann leave, saying, "I cannot live in this house with her anymore." But the judge, after hearing from both of them, did not give them what they wanted. He didn't give either one of them what they wanted. They ended up with only something called a no abuse order, which is simply an order not to abuse one another. He refused to force either one of them out of the home. He refused to grant custody to either one of them, and told them in no uncertain terms, "Go back to your house, figure it out, and if you come back here, I'm going to call Child Protective Services and your daughter will be taken away from you." That's what they heard. And I would suggest the evidence will prove that they heard that loud and clear. Because although there had been multiple 911 calls before that, there had been multiple restraining orders, multiple things that occurred where they were reporting out to what had happened. On May 26, 2009, all of that stopped. The evidence will show they weren't going to risk what the judge had threatened. And instead, they went home to do what they'd already said they couldn't do, which is figure it out themselves. In the ensuing months after that, for about the next 7 months or so leading up to Ann's death, the divorce proceedings that I told you about earlier proceeded in court. There was a back and forth, there were many court dates. Ann moved out of the house, they were separated. Ann established her own residence away from the defendant. They were working on co-parenting with one another. On Christmas Eve, in the holidays that year, they made an attempt to reconcile. And they signed paperwork voluntarily dismissing the divorce proceedings on Christmas Eve, 2009, 3 months before Annamarie's death. But the evidence will show that despite that effort on Christmas Eve to try to stay together, to try to work it out, that those efforts were completely futile. All the issues that they had had for years were unresolved. They had not gone away. And all the same issues were still present. A couple of months later, weeks before Ann's death, they went on a cruise down in Florida with Brianna. And before that cruise, they visited Ann's aunt, Aunt Nancy Kaufman, who you'll hear from during the course of this trial. Trying to make it better, trying to put on a happy face, trying to stay together on this cruise. But you'll hear from Nancy Kaufman that the issues were still there. And on that trip, she heard the defendant say, "I want a divorce." All those things they were facing before the end of their relationship, the division of debt, the child custody disputes, were all back on the table, weeks before Annamarie's murder. On March 28, 2010, which was the night before Annamarie was killed, Annamarie went to a shift as a paramedic and a firefighter. It started at 8 p.m., it was an overnight shift. When that happened, the defendant had a friend of hers, Mike Cieranowski, over at the house. Ann did not know about that, and she was not happy about it. The defendant will describe in her interview that it was a big source of contention, who they would socialize with outside of one another. And Ann that night was, quote, "so mad." But you won't just have to take her word for it. You will see phone contact between the two of them while Ann is at work and Cara has this friend over at the house. You'll see the text messages that are sent between the two of them during that time frame. You will see the hostility, you will see the anger, you will see all the things that I'm talking about. You'll see that Ann, in those text messages, hours before she was killed, said to the defendant, "I hate the relationship we have. I hate how I feel. I'm going to leave." When Ann ended her shift at 8 a.m. the next morning on the day of her murder, March 29, 2010, she went home, and that argument that had been happening over text messages and phone calls and voicemails the night before was still there, still in the house at 18 Barton Street between the two of them. Additionally, you'll see phone activity of Ann during that time frame, between 8 a.m. approximately in the morning when she got home, and 12:21 p.m., right after noon that particular day. You'll see that Ann was a regular user of her cell phone, and on that day, she was regularly using her cell phone that morning. You'll see that between those 4 hours or so, between phone calls, between text messages, between pictures she was taking and sending to others, she used her phone approximately 40 times within that 4-hour period. At 12:21, Ann made her last outgoing call on her phone. She happened to call her aunt, Nancy Kaufman, that I told you about earlier, that she's very close with. Nancy did not answer. She didn't leave a voicemail. But the phone shows that was her last outgoing activity on her phone. Her phone is silent from that point. At that same time, someone else's phone is also silent, and that's the phone of the defendant. From 12:21 until approximately 5 p.m. that evening, approximately 4.5 hours, the defendant also has no outgoing phone activity on her phone. She actually misses a couple of calls that come into her phone that she does not answer. And Ann also misses a text that comes in at 1:53 that shows later on her phone as unread. A text she would normally reply to and look at that she did not that day. The evidence will show that the reason for the silence and the reason Ann last used her phone at 12:21 p.m. that day is because shortly after 12:21, the defendant killed her. The argument that had been going on all night, the argument that continued in the house when they were there the next morning, it found its way to the top of the basement stairs. And you'll see and hear that the top of the basement stairs also happens to be a couple of feet away from the exterior entrance, the side door of the home. That was the regular entrance used, just feet away from one another. And in the defendant's words, they were still tit for tat at the doorway. The evidence will show that in that area at the top of a set of very steep basement stairs, the argument's still going on. That argument found its way down those stairs and ended at the base of those stairs on a cold cement floor with Ann bloodied, with her being hurt, with her being bruised. And this argument was the argument to end all arguments between them. At this point with Ann and her condition of the things that have been said, of the things that they knew that had happened in their past, the evidence will show that things had gone too far, gone further than ever gone before. In the defendant's mind, there was no turning back. She put her hands around Annamarie's neck and she strangled her until she was dead. After she killed Annamarie, the evidence will show that the defendant engaged in a lengthy scheme to conceal the crime that she had just committed, to misdirect the investigation in this case, and to avoid the police from discovering what she had done. It started with her attempt to alter the crime scene. The evidence will show that the defendant engaged in an attempt to clean up the basement area where Annamarie had been killed. When the police ultimately arrived later that night, and forensic scientists from the lab and crime scene technicians arrived, they saw very clearly that there was a significant amount of blood around Annamarie's body. You'll see and hear evidence that she had significant gashes to her head, the sides and the back of her head, down to the skull, that caused a significant amount of blood at the scene, much of which was still visible when the responders got there. However, they're also trained to look for blood that's not there anymore, that you can't see with the naked eye, and they have tools to be able to do that. You'll hear evidence that these crime scene technicians applied a substance called leucocrystal violet, also known as LCV. It's a chemical applied that reacts when it touches or hits blood. That can no longer be seen, but which is still there. And you'll hear that when they applied this LCV throughout the basement, it lit right up. The whole basement, bright blue and purple all around Annamarie's body, in parts where blood was visible, but also in parts where blood was no longer visible. You'll have an opportunity to see and hear testimony from a member of the crime scene technician services, wipes and swipes and smears and movement within that blood that's no longer visible to the naked eye. In areas where there's blood that's later determined through DNA analysis to belong to Annamarie. So you will hear that there was an attempt to clean up the basement. You'll also hear, in terms of the crime scene itself, evidence that will establish an attempt to stage a break-in, to make it look like someone broke into the house and must have killed Annamarie. You'll have an opportunity to see the door jamb in the door on that exterior door that I talked about. That's just a couple of feet from the top of that basement stairs. And you'll hear and see evidence of hack marks that are in the door jamb of that door, on the side frame of the door. What I mean by that is crescent-shaped hack marks where the wood is cut out and there are wood chips on the threshold of the door immediately below it. You'll have the opportunity to see a shovel that was used to create those marks, a shovel that belonged at the Rintala residence, that had white paint residue that's consistent with the paint residue from the door jamb. And you'll see those marks. But what you won't see, ladies and gentlemen, is damage to the door itself. In other words, you won't see any hack marks or movement or chips off of the door on the actual plane of the door itself. You'll see there's a large pane of glass on that door next to the doorknob, which is unaltered, not damaged in any way. And the doorknob was still intact and it could still lock. It still worked. The evidence will show you, based on the angle of those marks that I'm talking about and the evidence of the door, that those hack marks were done with the door open. That's why they appeared that way. That's why the door was not actually damaged. An attempt to stage the scene to make look like a break-in. Now, after the defendant altered the crime scene, you will hear evidence that she left. She got out of the house. She took Brianna, who was still in the house with them, and left. And the evidence will show that this was an attempt to create an alibi, to be somewhere else that day, on the day that Ann was killed. At approximately 5 p.m. that evening, you'll see the defendant pop up on various surveillance videos at places around the area. The Holyoke Mall, Stop and Shop, Burger King, a pass-through at McDonald's. And you'll see her and Brianna on these surveillance videos. You'll also see quick trips at these places and small purchases. Purchases of $1.50 here, $7 here, receipts kept, receipts put into her truck for these purchases, $14 of groceries at Stop and Shop, all within this time frame. You'll also hear within that same time frame, and I'm talking about the time frame of 5 to 7 p.m., as Annamarie is discovered shortly after 7 p.m. that night. So those 2 hours that she's out of the house. You'll also hear evidence of an attempt to create a digital alibi. What I mean by that is her calling and her texting incessantly Annamarie's cell phone, which, as I indicated earlier to you, is obviously not being answered or responded to these text messages. These voicemails you'll have an opportunity to hear. You'll hear at least 4 voicemails over that period of time. You'll see the text messages that she sends her. Now, you'll also hear that in her interview with the state police, the defendant says that the reason she left the house that day was so that Annamarie could sleep. She worked an overnight shift the night before, and she was due to work another overnight shift starting at 8 p.m. that night. So this was her time to get her nights of rest in. But despite that, even though they left so Annamarie can sleep, you will see her calling, her texting, why aren't you picking up, and leaving on these voicemails all the places she's going, all the things she's buying on these long voicemails to Annamarie. The evidence will establish this is an attempt to create the impression she has no idea Annamarie is dead and to be somewhere else. You'll also hear that as she was driving around, evidence that she disposed of items. That McDonald's that I talked to you about earlier, where there's a surveillance video, she tells the state police about going to McDonald's. She says that she went into the McDonald's, made a different choice about not buying food there, and decided to go somewhere else, so didn't go into the store and didn't go through the drive-thru at McDonald's. But what she fails to tell the state police, that they find out whenever they pull the video, is that when she goes into that parking lot at McDonald's, she goes by multiple trash cans in the parking lot, all the way to the back exterior trash can at the furthest most corner of the McDonald's parking lot. Pouring down rain, and in the pouring down rain, she exits her truck, walks over to that trash can, and goes back into her car and leaves. Something she didn't tell the state police about. When they go to that trash can, they find 3 rags, consistent with types of rags that are used for cleaning. Cut out pieces of fabric, and particularly a pink cloth diaper, an old pink cloth diaper that would be used for a baby. The same type of pink cloth diaper that's located under the sink at 18 Barton Street in the kitchen, among a bunch of other rags. You'll also see surveillance video, as I said, from these places, the fact that she's driving an open bed truck. In the back of that truck, you will see in surveillance video larger items that are moving around within the back of that truck, including up until less than a half an hour before she arrives home on the surveillance video. But by the time she drives home, those items are no longer there. And she didn't tell the state police about it. By 7 p.m. that night, she's now done what she wants to do. The evidence will show she's altered the scene, she's created her alibi, she's disposed of items, and she has to go home. She has a baby, it's time to go home and to initiate a police response to the house. And she doesn't do that by going into the house, using her cell phone, calling 911. What she does instead is she scoops up her daughter, Brianna, the dog, the family dog that lives at this house, and she runs over to the neighbor's house, the Dupuy residence at 20 Barton Street, the next door neighbor. She gives them some cryptic message to them saying, Anne's in the basement, call 911, which he does, and then she goes back to the house. The evidence will show that in a last-ditch effort in those moments to contaminate that crime scene, to eliminate whatever forensic evidence continues to be around Annamarie's body, she dumped a 5-gallon bucket of paint all over Anne's body, all around Anne's body. She then got herself under Anne's body, rolled Anne's body up on top of her, got herself in all the blood and paint, and waited. Shortly after that 911 call was made by the neighbors, the police and the paramedics arrived at the scene. They find the defendant underneath Anne's body. They see her crying. She's yelling, "Anne is dead." She says she can't get out from Anne's body, even though she got under her body on her own. And they assist her in doing that. And they get her out, and they move her upstairs. And the evidence will show that one of the first people she talks to that night is Officer Gary Polder of the Granby Police Department within that home. And he asks her several questions. What's going on? What happened today? And in that conversation, the evidence will show the defendant made a critical mistake. He asks her, "What time did you leave the house? When's the last time you saw Anne alive?" And she says, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. The reason that that is a significant piece of evidence, ladies and gentlemen, is that although the paint that was there is fresh, it's wet, you'll hear the first responders, you'll see the boot prints that they made in that wet paint.
I'm sorry, did you want to be heard?
Yes, ma'am. May I continue, Your Honor?
You may.
As I indicated, when the first responders arrived at the scene, they found the defendant underneath the body of Annamarie, and they helped her out from that body. And I told you a few minutes ago that she made a critical mistake saying 3 p.m. You will hear evidence that when the first responders arrived, they observed the body of Annamarie Rintala, they touched the body of Annamarie Rintala, they moved her arm, they moved her hips, they moved her body in order to release Cara from out underneath the body. And they will testify in this trial that when they did so, her body was stiff as a board. Her body was completely one unit. Her arms were above her head. When they moved her body, it was completely locked in that position and moved as a single unit, stiff as a board. And the reason that will be important during the course of this trial is I expect you will hear evidence that, in the opinion of forensic pathologists and medical examiners, that her body was in well-developed rigor mortis, which is the stiffening of the body after death. And you'll hear from the medical examiner in this case, Dr. Joanne Richmond, who worked for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of Massachusetts, who did the autopsy in this case, who determined, in her view, the opinion of cause of death being manual strangulation, and that she will offer an opinion before you regarding time of death of Annamarie. You'll also hear, based on the evidence in the case, an opinion from another doctor by the name of Dr. Thomas Andrew, the former chief medical examiner in New Hampshire. Both of these medical examiners have over 30 years of experience. I expect they will testify that based on the conditions of Ann's body, when the first responders arrived at approximately 7:15 p.m. that night, that it is their opinion that Annamarie was dead well before 3 o'clock. And by the defendant's own admission, only 2 adults were home at 3 o'clock that day, her and Annamarie. During the course of this trial, the evidence that I just indicated to you will come through many different sources. You'll hear from numerous witnesses, you'll hear from the first responders, as I indicated, paramedics and police officers. You'll hear from state police troopers who responded to the scene and were in charge of the investigation. You'll hear from crime scene technicians and forensic scientists, members of the crime lab who examined the physical evidence collected at the scene, who conducted fingerprint analysis and DNA analysis. You'll hear from the forensic pathologists, as I indicated to you. Granby police officers who responded previously to the incidents, the domestic disputes between the defendant and Annamarie. You'll see photos and videos of the crime scene and Ann's body. You'll see the photographs of the LCV and that bright blue color of that blood at the crime scene. Surveillance video, phone records, 911 calls, divorce filings, restraining orders. And you will have the opportunity to hear over 3 hours of the interviews conducted of the defendant the night of Annamarie's death and the next morning. The video and audio recorded, and you'll have an opportunity for yourself to see everything that she said about her relationship with Annamarie. And at the end of the trial, the evidence will prove to you that the defendant, Cara Rintala, killed Annamarie, that she intended to kill Annamarie, and that she did so with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity or cruelty. Thank you.